Hi, everybody. I'm George Watts, the Senior Vice President of Employee Benefits here with Hub International, coming to you live from Cumberland, Maine. Good to see everybody today. On behalf of my Hub colleagues across the state, we're thrilled to be partnering with the Portland Press Herald on our Business Unusual webinar series about what's next in our constantly evolving landscape and where the Maine community goes from here. Today's topic regarding talent acquisition and retention is no doubt one of the most pressing issues right now, and we've got a great lineup to discuss to bring the discussion to life. I hope you'll keep in mind that we're always available to help you navigate these uncertain times. This isn't about our bottom line. This is about us coming together to heal the community, and Hub is here to help. Whether you need human resources, risk management, or retirement solutions, our job is to help get you to the other side of this crisis and set you up for the future. So with that, I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Mim, to get us started.
Hey, everybody. I'm Mim Minicello. Thanks, George. I'm the President of Employee Benefits for Hub International here in New England. And I'm really pleased to be here with this awesome panel that we've put together, such a timely topic. We have sort of two phenomena going on that we're going to hit. One is we still have unemployment, which I'll show you some data on that in a second. And the other is we have a really good amount of anecdotal evidence that employers are having a hard time finding talent. So I'm really thankful to the Portland Press Herald for bringing us all together and giving us this venue. So what we're doing today is we're going to have a really vivid panel conversation. But before, I'm going to run through a few slides before we get to that. So we're hoping that you all will throw your comments and questions into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring those so I can kind of try to weave them in. Unless you're my mom, then I'm not going to put that one in. No, just kidding. Anyway, so before I overwhelm you with my data, my slides here, I'd like to ask the panel to introduce themselves. So Ed and Melanie and Andy, tell us, even though everyone knows who you are, if you don't mind, tell us who you are, what your work role is. And since we're talking talent today, how did you find your current gig? So Ed, you want to go? You might have.
I am now unmuted, I think. Okay. Awesome. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Ed McCursey. I have been in the recruiting and employment staffing business for over 30 years. Started ProSearch in 1994 here in Portland. We've grown to 12 people. The way I got my current gig is I was working for a national recruiting firm that was going to go public and wanted us all to move down to Florida. Had a young family at the time and loved Maine, so that wasn't going to happen. So my best option was to start my own firm. I also recently launched Live and Work in Maine, which is a nonprofit initiative to attract and retain talent here in the state of Maine.
Awesome. Melanie, how about you go?
Hi, I'm Melanie Tinto, and I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer here at WEX. And the way I received my current gig, I've been here for 3.5 years. I was recruited most recently out of company in Minnesota, but my roots are here in Maine. I was born and raised here and spent the past 23 years prior to coming back to WEX working at a variety of Fortune 100 companies. And so really excited to be back in Maine and excited to be with part of a growing global company.
You're on, Andy.
Okay, so I'm Andy Shepard. I'm General Manager at Saddleback, and I was an executive at L.L. Bean for 16 years. While there, I worked on a model to try and create a new economic model for rural communities in Maine. And I left the company in 1999 to focus my energies on a company called Maine Winter Sports Center. And we bought and built ski areas around the country, or around the state of Maine. Used them for economic development. We had all sorts of programs to make rural communities more sustainable. And I did that for 20 years, retired last summer, I guess it was, and worked with Arcturus to help buy Saddleback. When that was successful, I took it over in January of last year, so about 1.5 years ago.
Great. Well, thanks, you guys. I'll be right back at you in a second. But what I thought I would do is just sort of level set where we are, right? Because the pandemic has really intensified the variables related to finding talent. And I think for most companies and most CEOs that I'm talking to, finding the best talent, retaining the ones that are great and finding the next is still a business imperative that most of us cannot, we need to keep the business going. So what I thought I'd do is just give you a little bit of data, because I'm a little bit of a data nerd. So I'm going to just show you some stuff I pulled together. So where are we anyway? So if you take a look at this slide, and you see, this is from labor force participation from the Center for Workforce Research and Information. And the red line is the US and the blue line is Maine. And you can see in March of 2020 that precipitous drop in labor force participation. And then you're looking for March of 2021, you're seeing it come back. So while labor force participation has climbed back, it's not where it was prior to the beginning of the pandemic. So as I said, we have this kind of dual reality here, which is we have a lot of unemployment, but we're still having a tough time finding the talent we need. So let's talk about how the industries got affected in Maine. So again, this is Maine Department of Labor data by industry. You're all very familiar with the industries that are active in Maine, and you can see this gigantic loss in employment here from February to December. You see leisure and hospitality, you see government, healthcare, manufacturing, ed services, all the things that you would expect to see. I think what's also interesting about the data here is you look at the gender break here, and women in Maine account for 57% of the jobs lost between February and December. So if you think about it, I mean, 7% variance between 50-50, maybe that doesn't stun you, but that's thousands and thousands of people. So it leads me to kind of think about, okay, well, what are some of the factors that are impacting the people who are looking, who are considering work? And so I pulled down, this is US Chamber of Commerce data, and they did a study in 2019, and that's this box on the left here, where they took a deep look at 4 states and they said, what are the conditions that are making people either drop out of the workforce or skip their training or not take a promotion, all due to what they're finding is conflicts with childcare. And when they took a look at that, they saw somewhere between $500,000 and $3.5 billion of economic viability coming right out of the pie, if you will, for those 4 states. And the US Chamber has been doing surveys all through the pandemic and had a couple of additional childcare related elements that I wanted to share with you. 2/3 of the people responding to the survey are saying to them that they're going to have to change their childcare arrangements. This is as of October of 2020. 75% of the people with kids under 6 say they're going to have to stay home or try to engage their family differently. 75%, that's amazing. And in June, they took a look in this survey and employers were saying, about 40% of employers were saying, hey, I'm worried people are going to be peeling out of the workforce. And then when they took a look in October, 32% of the same study here said, oh, sorry, that was in October. In September, they said, 32% of the employers said, hey, we've lost people. We've lost people because the childcare isn't working for them. So that's where, can I stop share, ma'am? Yes, I can. Skills. Okay, so that's where we are. So what I'll do, Melanie, I'm going to come right at you and just sort of walk through Andy and Ed as well. Tell me first, as we start this conversation, how have your businesses or your teams fared in regard to either recruiting or retention in the pandemic, post-pandemic?
So if I think back to just when we started the pandemic, there was a lot of goodwill, I think, that we provided to employees. So from a retention perspective, we're riding that wave a bit in terms of what's the goodwill and how do we treat our employees with caring and empathy during the pandemic and due to the transition of going from the office to home. Mm-hmm. I think the compelling value proposition now is how do you continue to re-recruit your employees, right? So how do you start thinking about what they actually need and how do you meet them where they are is going to be critically important. And frankly, that's going to be a differentiator for a lot of the employers in terms of who has the best employment value proposition for their employees. It's going to continue to re-recruit them and create that ongoing goodwill.
Do you see that, Melanie, at all levels? I'm sorry, I promised to go to the next speaker, but I just wanted to ask this question.
I actually do. Okay. I think you see it in the hourly employees in terms of the demand for talent in some of the retail box stores and some of the other industries that we're that we're competing against.
Yep.
You see it at the senior levels, particularly in the technical expert talent, where
Right.
there's a high demand and the boundaries have now disappeared. And we'll probably talk more about that, I'm assuming, today.
Yeah.
But that's a key piece in terms of how do you make sure you're continuing to engage them, create really strong roles and development paths to retain the talent. And I see it at all levels, frankly, right now.
Andy, what's your mindset of how the team fared?
Yeah, so we're somewhat different in that the mountain was closed for 5 years. We're a startup, so we don't really have the historical data to look back and say our numbers are down or up. What we did have was a business model, and our business model included hiring 200 people to start our season last winter, and we started the year with 120. And by the peak of our season, we got up to 150, which clearly is untenable. We're adding a lot more infrastructure. We're adding 3 new lifts. We're adding a mid-mountain lodge and restaurant. We're adding all sorts of things to the mountain that would suggest that we're going to need a lot more than 200 people next year. Our biggest challenge is that we are in a resort community that's rural, and coming out of the pandemic, everyone was leaving the urban environments for rural environments. And the rural environments they were preferring were those that were in proximity to, beautiful places to hang out, which is what Rangeley is all about. So affordable housing is our biggest challenge. That's in fact our existential crisis. And we're having to try and solve for that for our mountain. But what makes Saddleback unique is that we're owned by an impact fund. So my job is not only getting the mountain up and running again sustainably, but doing so in a way that solves for a lot of the challenges in the community. Affordable housing is one of those. We have to solve for childcare, which you spoke of, Mim. That's a critical challenge for us because in our community, there are a lot of young families that have had to step out of the workforce.
Right.
Because they have had children and there's no place for their children to be raised. So they have to stay home to do that themselves. We have to solve for childcare, get more of those workers back into the workforce. We have to provide affordable housing to attract more workers to the region. And we have to provide a quality of life for those people that want to come here and work. And I believe that we're nailing that part of it. We have plans to build employee housing, and we've got a task force that George has been an important part of to try and solve a lot of the other challenges that we're working on here.
Great stuff. Ed, how about you?
Yeah, so I guess to answer your question, I look at it that we have kind of 2 groups of employees. So we've got the office staff, the folks that do recruiting and staffing for our clients, and there's 12 of us. We were fortunate enough that we've always had some flexibility. I've always been a believer. I've got folks with young families, so over the years we've allowed a lot of flexibility, part-time, kind of hybrid, at home, remote work, and things like that. So that learning curve for us was not that dramatic. Although I am really proud of our team and just our ability to kind of over communicate and make sure that we were staying true to being a team. We've got a strong culture. We've got very little turnover, so we all know each other really well. It was really interesting, kind of zooming into each other's homes because we kind of started to learn a little bit, new things about each other. So that was kind of fun. So that's that group, and then we've got a little over 200 temporary or contract employees that work at our client sites, right, or work remotely. Some of those folks, a lot of them are IT folks, so they were working remotely pre-COVID. And that group, particularly proud of because it was pretty chaotic. We would have to talk to a client and figure out, okay, what are your rules of engagement? Are you having people back in? Are you going to allow temporary employees as well as your regular employees to work remotely? Like, how does that get set up? So we were kind of doing double, triple time, just communicating with our clients and communicating with that group of employees. But, we found that people are resilient, and, we won't do a whole memory lane in the whole thing, right? But it was pretty chaotic there for several months, trying to figure out what are the rules, and if somebody tests positive, does that mean everybody has to leave? And can they work remote for 3 weeks while everybody quarantines? Are they coming back? So overall we fared very well. We had a great year last year, and we're set for record activity this year.
Mim, let me add that I can't believe that I forgot to mention this. That Ed also is on one of those task forces. He's helping us create a staffing agency that that will help encourage young families and seasonal workers to move to the area, which is another part of our task force work.
Love this initiative. I think this is great. It's got a lot of legs on so many different levels.
Yeah.
Can Melanie hang with me for a second and talk a little bit about, or maybe it's better to go to Ed, and I won't do this to you where I'm assigning everything, but here's what I'm thinking of. What kind of talent are you having the most difficulty finding right now? And for Ed, it might be talent you're looking for, talent your clients are looking for. What are you hearing about? So no judgment, but.
Ed, did you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
Sure. Well, why don't you go, and I'll fill in some blanks.
Yeah, so I think obviously there's a couple areas that come up top of mind in terms of finding talent. One is technical experts. So if you think about anything related to a tax expert or an SEC expert, any of the specialty functions are really difficult to find right now. And then if you look at technology, just the continued demand for access to great technologists, whether it's developers or other areas of focus in the technology space, and then add on to that just a continued focus of diversity, the talent pool shrinks really quickly, and there's a large demand of not only companies in Maine going after this talent, but some of the top premier companies in the world that sit in Silicon Valley and other places are going after our talent where, it used to be the best kept secret here in Maine, and now everyone's found out how great it is here. So I'm sure Ed has more to share on that, but that's a key piece is, we've hit the map with great talent and great people and great location. And we just need to continue to make sure we have that value proposition to attract folks to stay here in Maine, or to attract them to work at companies that happen to be headquartered here as well.
Yeah, I think what I'd add to that is, there's a couple dynamics, right? And I think if we take ourselves back pre-COVID, the market was already tight. It was really hard, right? I mean, one of the reasons I launched Live and Work in Maine was it's like, wait a minute, we've got to market our competitive advantages here, because we need to recruit people not only locally, but we need to recruit people back, and we need to do a good job of telling our story here so we can get people from outside the state. I think more specifically to what's going on now, I think that folks that don't have the support at home, childcare, things like that, and really are having the toughest time, right? So, trying to figure out how to get back to work. And I think that your graph showed that. The other thing I would say is that there's still a lack of clarity from most employers as to what they're going to do longer term. So what happens is, if you're trying to attract somebody, and we're doing it every day, right? We're trying to recruit somebody, and they kind of know what their deal is with their current employer. This is what we're being told and all. And even if there's unclarity, quite frankly, they're like, I'm a known quantity, so I've got a little bit of in the bank, right, with my current employer. Good point, Ed. And I'm going to try to get them to go talk to another employer that says, well, right now it's remote. We're not sure after Labor Day. We're not sure longer term. We might go hybrid. And that uncertainty, people just say, I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to wait until the dust settles. And so it just has tightened up what was already a real tight market.
And Andy, you commented a little bit about trying to find a way to move young families to the region. Are there other kinds of talent that you're seeing a real tough time finding too?
Yeah, so to build on that thought, when the mountain closed down, there was a significant migration of seasonal workers who, having lost the opportunity to work in the wintertime, lost the opportunity to have year-round income wages. Yep. They had to go somewhere else to find that year-round employment. We're trying to attract them back, and that is going to be a long haul that will depend on housing, childcare, workforce development, the kinds of things that George and Ed are helping us with. The biggest challenge that we're having right now is IT. And that's already been mentioned. Melanie spoke to that that's a challenge just across the state, but that's a challenge for us. And then restaurant workers, which is a challenge across the state as well. We have a new chef from 4th Street. Extremely excited about that. The quality of the food coming out of the kitchen is unfortunately good, because climbing the lodge here. But, it's a challenge everyone else has of how many people can we have to serve that food? And the restaurant is quickly picking up in popularity. There are more and more people here all the time, and we have to try and stay in front of that to make sure that our service promise matches matches what we're trying to accomplish here.
I totally hear this conflict from the tech point of view. I think no matter what market you're in, every company recognizes its need for tech in perhaps a different way than they ever did, because we all pushed, or many of us, pushed 1 million people out the door on a Tuesday about a year and a half ago, right? And so just figuring out how to get Wi-Fi big enough to everybody was a big deal. So I can't imagine that this is going to get any easier. Maybe Ed, I come back to you. Because you're in a constant need to find talent that will be willing to be placed somewhere too. How are you finding new sources of talent to meet all these needs that Andy and Melanie are talking about?
Well, I think we are certainly going out of state much more frequently than we would have several years ago. And I think I want to go back to, a point Melanie touched on, which is with this remote work and flexibility is a double-edged sword for employers in Maine, because while we can now attract somebody that maybe wants to stay in the Boston area, and you can allow them to work at Wax or somewhere else, Maine-based employers are losing tech talent to Google and Apple, and so it's just become this kind of global competition, if you will, and tech talent was tight before COVID, and it's going to continue to be. So, what we try to do is just get as creative as possible, try to meet people where they're at. Don't let them say no out of the gate. If they've never been to Maine, don't if they say, well, no, I don't think I want to go to New England, then we've got a little bit harder sell that we try to do. But so we try to get them to say maybe, and we try to get them a lot of information. And again, I'll pitch Live and Work in Maine, but the whole idea behind that initiative is really to lean forward into what we feel are a lot of competitive advantages, which is the state of Maine itself and the quality of life.
Melanie or Andy, want to comment on that?
Yeah, I
don't
think
have to.
Well, there's a couple things that we were just looking at as well. Is one is the culture of strategic competitive advantage. So can you leverage the culture and your value proposition to not only attract talent, but to retain it as well? I think that's critical. You don't want to be hiring folks in and then have a really bad culture and have them walking out the door 6 months later. So that's something that we continue to focus on. And I think it's one way in which we attract talent here at Wax. The other is to Ed's point, we've actually broadened the doors of where we'll have talent work now. So historically, we tended to be more of an in-office culture. We had some flexibility based on some roles, but the reality is the lion's share of our roles were based in office. And I think you're seeing a lot more of the flexibility that, while it's a challenge to Ed's point around other companies are doing the same thing, it also provides us an openness around access to talent that we might not have had before. And so we have a broader opportunity. We also leverage extensively our employee referral network. So our employees are some of our best source of our talent and the way we get additional recruits here at Wax.
Melanie, I might pull a little bit on that one too. I'm sort of seeing this, I think you guys were saying a double-edged sword, but I'll call it two faces of Eve. There's a 1940s movie reference for you, Andy. Okay, well, anyway. At the end of the day, we're saying, hey, we want to be flexible for our people as employers, but then we actually really want everything to go back the way it used to be. I think I got a question in the chat from Dawn, and Dawn, forgive me for ad-libbing, but that's the way I'm taking the question. So I wonder if you, Melanie, maybe not so much a commentary on Wax, but you have friends in your HR community, as do I, that are wrestling with how does culture mix with what is really going to happen at the bench level, as it were. So how are you watching people wrestle with that?
So I don't, it's funny, I've reflected a lot on this just in my past and even in discussions with other peers, to your point. And when I think about flexibility, employees have always wanted flexibility or some semblance of flexibility. The difference is they just hadn't dared to ask, right? Sure. And so not everyone had the opportunity, if their company was overt about it, you tended to see much more of the hybrid, which we're talking about, which I think a lot of companies will go toward. And what we hadn't done before is engaged employees in the conversation of what's going to best meet their needs so they can work, live, and thrive. How do they actually think about what their needs are And, it was almost thinking about at the hierarchy, you'd have the company's needs, then the employee's needs. It's flipped, and it should, right? The employee should have a clear voice in what that culture is, how and when they want to work. I think the trade-off with that is making sure that the company and the managers are crystal clear on what are the accountabilities, how do we continue to partner together, how do we make sure we're highly productive and effective, and really laser focused on our customers. At the end of the day, that's most important. You can be highly visible in the office. You can also disappear in the office just as easily as you can at home. And so leveraging all the various communication vehicles that we have at our fingertips is a key way that we're going to be able to make sure that those employees are successful regardless of where they sit and the choices that they make. So I probably am on the extreme side of saying, what's going to work best is if you have that trust and accountability, and it really doesn't matter where you do that role. Obviously there's certain role-based, if you're servicing technology, you may need to be in the office, but for the most part, there's many roles that have that opportunity to have flexibility. And so I think we all just need to take that into consideration with the expectation that you still need to deliver on the promise of the work, which is your foundational ticket to doing that. And so, I don't know that it's changed. I think it's just people are more open to talking about it, which is a good thing. It's a really good thing.
Yeah, man, I've got a couple of thoughts there. One is reflected on this for a while that, it used to be really difficult for somebody to say, hey, I'd like a different deal than everybody else on my team, right? There was this kind of fairness thing. And I think what COVID did is we all as employers just said, you know what? Go take care of yourself. We'll figure this out. We'll set you up remotely. We're not going to require anybody to come back right away. We're all scared. We're not sure what's going on. We're not sure how long it's going to last. And nobody worried about, I'll call it equity, right? Nobody was like, wow, their deal's better than mine or whatever. And it's going to be interesting to see if we can put, and I don't know if we want to, kind of put that back together, right? Where it's like, well, wait a minute, you're on this team and, everybody's supposed to be here 8 to 5 and that's the role. So that's one thing that I think is going to be interesting to wrestle with. And the other is I've talked to a number of clients about this because, because clients ask me, so it's okay. I'm trying to get as much information from the marketplace as I can. And somebody said something really interesting. Well, first off, I think that this generation, the latest generation, wants this flexibility. So you're just going to have to deal with the fact that they've now gone through this and they've proven they can do the work in a lot of cases. But one of my clients made a really great point. They said, what we're worried about is, you bring these young people in and they all want to work remote and all that. Where's the building of talent from a management standpoint and a leadership standpoint? If you're at home all the time, what's your visibility of the teams? How is that talent pipeline continuing to be built? And I'm wondering, Melanie, if at WAX, if you're wrestling with that a little bit, because there are so many really talented young people, and if they just start working from home, how do you put them in a management or leadership role with that lack of visibility?
Yeah, and part of it is what's the moments that matter? How do they actually interact with others? How do they build relationships? The times that they are in the office, they're going to not be completely invisible. The times they are in the office, how are they investing in those relationships? And how are we also equipping managers to make sure they're having ongoing career conversations with the employees?
Right.
I think back in my career, some of the best employees I've ever had, long before, I'm dating myself, but long before video, I had some of the best employees. I'd never even met them face to face. They lived
Interesting.
or they worked in other places. And so, they end up being my shining stars and they delivered above and beyond what was asked of them. And so I do think it's an interesting formula, Ed, which is how do they get the visibility and access? How do we make sure managers are well equipped to create career development strategies and plans and have those openness of conversations around aspirations and being crystal clear of what they do well and what they need to do additional, or how do they augment the opportunity areas that they have? And so again, it's this two-way conversation that has to happen in order for employees to be successful and grow, and managers have to be equipped and comfortable having those conversations as well.
We just had an internal event for our employees. Hub's got 13,000 employees nationwide. So, there's a lot of us. And one of the things we were talking about is mentorship, sponsorship, and how do you do that remotely? So I'm like so resonating with what you're saying, Melanie, because that, I think, right now I'm neck deep in the how do you find the talent, and then I've got some questions about onboarding because that comes right up for me when you find new talent. But right after that is how do you keep that talent growing? I personally am a giant Simon Sinek fan. Like I love that idea of being in your why. So because when people work in their why, then they love to do, they love what they're doing, and that, that's how the customers get satisfied. So I think you keep your people happy and everything else comes from there. So I love that comment.
Mim,
Yeah.
I wanted to speak for a second about the original question, which was culture. And, my experience is that people come to a job for a number of different motivations. One is they want a job. The other is that they're motivated by the mission of the company that they're applying to.
Mm-hmm.
The other is that they're inspired by the culture and that they know people who work there. They want to be a part of that. What I've found is that what we're trying to create here is a culture that attracts those people who want to make a difference with what we're doing, which is to try and create a new model for what a resort looks like. Our commitment to the environment, our commitment to our customers as people, not numbers, to do so in an empowered environment. All these kinds of things, that's our brand. We're getting that out there. And we're trying to attract people who care about that.
Mm-hmm.
They want to come to work for us because that's what they want to be doing with their time. When they get here, we want to inspire them to take the next step, which is to actually take the job because they're inspired by our culture. And our culture is one of empowerment, where we're trying to empower everyone in the organization to play the role that they can, making sure that the overall enterprise is successful.
Mm-hmm.
We don't spend a lot of time talking about job descriptions. We have primary responsibilities, but our ultimate responsibility is success as an organization. So if we can get those people, then it allows us to take the next step, which is to make sure they understand as a startup, we're not able to pay Portland wages.
Mm-hmm.
And we will invest in our people as our investment proves to be successful. As we start to make more money, we can invest in our in our wages and salaries. That's the model that we're trying to put into place. And as long as we can find housing for the people when they say yes, as long as we can find childcare, I'm confident we'll be successful. But that's another way of going.
Andy, I just want to add to that. I think you hit the $1 million question, which is if you can build a sense of purpose and have a mission-driven organization, huge strategic competitive advantage right now. Totally is just agree. Making sure that there's something that captures not only the mind of the individual, but the hearts as well. That's the secret formula for sure.
Yeah. The surveys I've seen where it says, 52%, I think it was a Fast Company survey, 52% of the people are going to be looking for a new job. That's the deal. It's like, dude, I want to be working on a mission, Andy. So I see that as really compelling. Someone asked a question about relocation. I'm sure that's something, Melanie, that's in the relocation assistance. So if someone wanted to come to Maine, right? So let's say we are in the practice where we're soliciting them for employment here. Andy, are you guys thinking about that as a way to actually get people, in the region for you? Are you actually going to relocate them? We're not that far yet.
We have not had to do that. We've hired most of our senior leadership team. We've not had to do that. And thankfully we haven't, because as a startup, my preference would be that all the money goes on the mountain. And we've been able to do that so far.
Yeah.
I'm sure for other businesses, that's going to be a key part of it.
Can we pivot a little bit to entry-level recruitment? A couple people are asking questions about, what do you want from, I'll call it new grads, whether it be high school or college. What are you seeing there in terms of trying to find that talent and what they can do for you in your organizations?
I'll tell you, some of my most productive people are people who have yet to graduate from high school or college. They come in with, last year, because of the nature of schooling, we had a number of high school kids available to us. We had a lot of college kids. They came in with a passion, with an energy. They were smart. A couple of them have actually decided not to complete their college education because they found.
Wait, I'm a high school senior. Wait, okay, go ahead.
But the key thing is they've found a job that they're good at, that they love, and college ultimately is to prepare you to be able to be successful in life. The ones who have chosen to jump out of that, that treadmill and right into the job, these are people I'm not worried about.
Mhm. Yeah,
Highly
so
skillful, they're able to advocate for themselves. They're some of the most challenging negotiators that I've run into when it comes to wages. I like that about them. So
it's a great story. And any about, I don't know how much of the openings that you're cultivating are for new grads of either level here, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's actually a really interesting question for us. We went through a lot of soul searching 2 or 3 years ago because traditionally our clients would usually come to us when they needed somebody with a minimum of 2 or 3 years of professional experience, and they felt like we can get at the entry level people. That's not an issue. And what we found is the market's so tight that that when clients are calling us, they'll say, "Listen, we'll train, we'll take good people with the right attitude right out of college." So we've really renewed our focus both within the university system and the private colleges here in the state, and just trying to make that connection. And even for summer employment, if this particular summer, a lot of internship programs were canceled or scaled back. So what we've tried to do is tell people, listen, we can get you meaningful work with the employers you want to try out in Maine this summer, and maybe all summer at one place, or even better, sometimes we can cobble 2 or 3 different projects together for you, so you get a flavor for 2 or 3 different employers. So we've really leaned in on that, and it's paying off.
Forgive me for oversharing, but I literally just told you I had a high school seniors who's heading off to college,
Sure.
and my high school junior literally pulled out the driveway about an hour ago to go his first job interview. So I'm totally present in the rookies need a gig. So anyway, sorry, Melanie, sorry for the divergence.
Yeah, we continue to use internship programs. So that's a key feeder for us. And we continue to grow our early career pipeline. I think you'll see us continue to accelerate that. 1, because it fits the culture really well. And 2, because we can grow talent here very effectively. And so because of the tight labor market for the more senior level talent, it's a great opportunity for us to bring folks in and accelerate their development and growth here.
Yeah.
So we've been focused on that.
What are some of, oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, part of the question there, I think, if I heard you correctly, was also, what are employers looking for from entry level talent too? And I would add, because I always get nervous. People are so worried about what their major is, or gee, I'm not in the right major, and now I want to go do this. And what employers are looking for more and more, especially since they will train, but especially since the market's so tight, are what we're all calling soft skills, right? So it's not so much, gee, I took this class, or I have some expertise in this or that. It's, are you going to get along with people? Do you have a great attitude? Are you, willing to lean in and do more than whatever job you're supposed to be doing, or your job description states? Just looking for those kind of traits.
Yeah, what I say is attitude over aptitude, and that's exactly what we're focused on. We
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
No, go ahead.
So we it's all about making sure that we're bringing people in that can work with other people, that have a commitment to the enterprise over their own personal needs. There's a sign in my office, drama with a line through it. Just, not into drama around here. We want people that are focused on making sure that this business is successful. When we do run into drama, I say, there are tens of thousands of families in Franklin County right now that are desperately hoping that we're really good at our jobs. Talking about right now, helping them. And that tends to end the drama pretty quickly.
I think that dual approach here, where you have a mission that really speaks to people, and then at the same time, I'll say there's an aspect that Melanie, you started off with, which is kind of the trust that gets built. You're treating people with respect, and those two things come with expectations as well, regardless of how far you went through, anatomy and physiology at UNH. Just saying. Anyway, that still scarred me. It was a long time ago. I think, can I just ask, I know in our own company, we are reconsidering what our job descriptions require for education, because there was that, I have to have a 4-year degree to do everything. Are you guys finding similar openness, perhaps differently than you had before, to roles that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree?
Yeah, from my perspective, absolutely. And I think it goes to my previous answer around targeting college students and entry-level people. A great example is we do a lot of work around customer support and technical support positions on a temporary basis, direct hire basis. And frankly, 5 years ago, if a client called and said, hey, we need somebody for our call center or customer support, they would really be looking for at least a year of previous experience. And in a similar role, to business kind of customer support. And now, the definition is completely different. Waiter, waitress, bartender, that's customer facing. And, if you like dealing with customers, we will train you. So it's really changed that profile. So it's much less about, as you say, job description or something that's required. It goes back to attitude and a desire to do the work.
Melanie, any new perspectives for you guys, or had you already thought through that?
We have been working on this all along in terms of what's the balance between what's required and what's desired, right? And one of the other companies that I worked at, we required degrees at that company. And we had this long conversation one day. I said, just go up and pull all the CEOs that don't actually have degrees.
Yeah, so good.
And you might change your perspective because there's a lot of them that don't have degrees. And so it's about the judgment, the innovation, and what you bring to the role that's uniquely different, that really differentiates those individuals. There's some roles obviously that are required just because, of certifications and such. I understand that. And until other dynamics change, that's required. You have to, if you're a doctor, you need to have the formal education, to your point, but other roles don't necessarily need it. They can gather those skills in many different ways, whether it's coding or others. It doesn't necessarily have to be all through college, but it's also a proof point of how do they demonstrate what they can actually achieve. And you can show that in many different ways. And I think new employees have demonstrated that in terms of, it's not just about school, it's about other ways that you can gather those skills and those experiences and those deliverables.
So Melanie, I'm one of those executives that doesn't have a college degree.
See, perfect example.
I was hired into LL Bean at a time where if you wanted to succeed, you pretty much had to have a Harvard MBA. I was reminded of that regularly, and yet, I had a pretty successful career at Beans, and
that's great, Andy.
Have been able to accomplish some things since. And that speaks to what I'm looking for in people. I'm looking for someone who has a relentless pursuit of the objective, and that's what's defined my life. And where I find those kinds of people, I tend not to let them go. And I've found that those are the kind of people that can really make businesses work. You're passionate about what you're doing. You lean in. You're smart. You're willing to work with other people. Those are the skills I'm looking for. Obviously, we have lifts out there that require almost a NASA engineering degree to run.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in one of these high-speed detachable quads, it looks like a spaceship. CFO, a COO, those kinds of positions, they require very technical skills, and we have very good people in those positions. But most of the other ones, these are just people who care, who are smart, and are willing to work and continue to work until they accomplish the objective.
And totally props to you for speaking up, because half the time it's seeing people like me that allow others to go, okay, that's possible. So I'm just going to give snaps right back at you. Give me a second here on onboarding. So I'm going to just pivot for a minute. I know certainly for me that as we brought talent on during the pandemic at Hub, trying to figure out a way to navigate that, which we always used to yell at each other. I'm Italian. This is how you're doing. Hey, George, you got what you need. You can't do that when you're remote. So can we talk a little bit about what maybe you've watched people do to try to onboard their new employees differently?
Well, I'm actually in the process of hiring 3 positions all remotely. So I'm getting to have a lot of experience in that. The way we're doing is we go through the first rounds of hiring, because as we put these positions out to be hired, we got resumes from around the country. And
Great.
The strength of the resumes was impressive, but wide difference from what we experienced last year. So, the first rounds are Zoom, and then when we find a finalist, we bring them in. Nothing is as impactful as face-to-face when you're onboarding people. Is my
Totally agree.
and the nature of our business is people are going to have to, once they're hired, they're going to have to work here. We don't have any work remotely positions. It's just the nature of our business.
I'm making myself crack up. Hop on the ski lift. That doesn't work over the camera, sorry. I can totally see that. Either one of you guys comment on that? Not the hop on the ski lift thing, sorry. Yeah.
Andy said it best. I mean, nothing's going to replace face-to-face, right? The accelerated time when you onboard in person and you're able to build those relationships very quickly is still the best way to onboard individuals. What we're doing is making sure we're focusing on robust onboarding plans. Who do you need to meet? What are the expectations of the role? How do we make sure we're orchestrating that much more effectively, in addition to getting, the technology and other things they need, since the majority of our folks are still at home. We're bringing them back in slowly, but a lot of folks are still working remotely. And so we're still hiring a lot of people and having to onboard them remotely. I think it takes an extra 30 to 60 days is my guesstimate, just to get them settled in. And so you lose a little bit of accelerated productivity because of the relationships. To your point, who do you call? How do you interact? How do you get things done? You learn that pretty quickly when you're in person. It just takes a little bit longer when you're remote.
30 to 60 days, you said?
That's my guesstimate.
I'm
Not
making
a
a
data
note.
driven fact. It's a Melanie.
No, it's okay. It's a good anecdote. I think, it's an important thing to think about, right? I'm a consultant by trade, but I'm managing a pretty good sized company too. And I'm like, you've got to make accommodations for that in order to get up to speed. Ed,
you have to back up your recruiting timeline to plan for that if you need them on, ready to fully perform in the role.
Yep. Ed, what do you see? What are you asking of your client companies as they look for that help? Are you changing, hey, this is what I'm going to need for you for onboarding? Are you doing anything different?
Yeah, I think if we're making a differentiation between screening and onboarding, obviously Zoom interviews and things like that are prevalent. We've got a lot of technology talent that we recruit. A lot of our clients are actually hiring people without meeting them face to face, but through Zoom, things like that, right? And it's because the person's going to work remote anyway. So there's a lot of that going on. I think more from a process standpoint, we've invested in a platform that allows us to just automate all the paperwork, all that flow, right? So all the, whether it's background checks, things like that, and just payroll paperwork and things. So it just makes us much lighter on our feet. So a lot of times what we're dealing with is we're recruiting, especially on the temp and contract side, there's usually a pretty robust turnaround that our clients are requiring. So, to be able to automate a lot of that process I think has given us a competitive advantage. But it's been kind of fascinating to watch clients. A lot of them have gotten very comfortable with kind of sight unseen. They're doing Zoom interviews, right? But making a final decision without having the person step foot.
We had to, Ed. We had to. There's no way you could keep doing the job for the clients without adding people.
Right.
So I totally see that. I think I really do appreciate, Melanie, you sharing that, the onboarding timing changing things, because I don't think I've really thought that through. Right now, the people I'm talking to, our clients and CEOs and things like that, it's all about finding talent. That's what I'm hearing. Can we talk a little bit about wage escalation? Are you seeing that yet? I have a friend, I think I told you this, Melanie, I have one of my peers that runs Idaho practice for Hub. And she was like, you cannot believe what's happening with talent out here. People are dropping in droves to Idaho to pluck off the best and brightest that we have. So I'm sure that's coming our way here too.
Yeah, from a salary perspective, it used to be you do annual salary reviews. That's the way a lot of companies operated. And now you see it accelerating, and then it went to, semi-annual. Now you're seeing it accelerating to saying, where's the market moving on a quarterly basis?
Got it.
And for some technology roles, frankly, on a monthly basis, depending on what part of the country or the world that you're in. And so the speed with which the market's moving is much more accelerated than it was even 12, 24 months ago.
I'm going back because I'm 1,000 years old to the .com era. And that was, I was working at a really big company who ended up with 2 fee schedules, one for tech help because that thing was just going bananas and the rest of us were eating peanut butter and jelly in the cafeteria. So I get that. I remember that. What about Andy, you haven't got that far yet, right? Where you're probably seeing wage escalation. This is about identifying bodies at this point, I think, right?
Well, no, it's wage escalation too.
Oh, it is too. Okay.
There's a
Yep.
bidding war, restaurant industry.
Yeah,
where
fair point.
everybody in the world is competing for
Same
restaurant.
12 people. Yep.
So yeah, there's definitely escalation there. There's escalation across the board. Some of it was legislated. When we closed down 6 years ago, minimum wage was $7. Now it's, I don't know what minimum wage is, but we're paying $13 to $17 an hour now for the same kind of positions. That has a pretty profound impact on the business model. And the executives are no different. We're not able to pay Portland wages, but we're paying a lot more than we have in the past up here.
Ed, how about you? You've got a grand point of view. Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think I look at it kind of two different ways. One is more that local talent, and certainly, at the entry level and hourly rate, I think that we've certainly seen some uptick there, right? So no doubt about it, and that's just a supply demand issue, right? I mean, you've got to hire people. You can make an adjustment and $2, $3 an hour, and all of a sudden, you're looking at a different kind of pool of people, right? I think probably at a higher level, I think the thing to consider is that, Melanie's working for a global company, right? So they've got the in-house expertise to do the kind of things she's talking about. What I think about is that there used to be kind of a Maine discount, right? A lot of employers thought, oh, gee, of course we want worldwide talent, do a national search, but we want that 20% Maine discount. And we, over the years, we would say that there is no such thing really. But the clients would just, small, medium-sized companies just decide that, hey, we've got internal inequity issues and things like that. So this is all we can pay. And so they might have to scale down their requirements, right? So when I think of wage inflation, I go back to, if Google is coming here and recruiting and telling people they can stay in Maine, there's no Maine discount. So this is really painful for some employers that maybe felt to kind of get away with paying, quote, Maine wages. I think for global companies like a WEX, it's just, they're a little more on top of it.
I think Melanie had noted earlier this sort of recalibration of who has the upper hand, if you don't mind. I think that's what you said, right? So at the end of the day, if we're searching for the talent that we must have to run our businesses, then we'll have to pay attention to the inflation that comes with that, I think. So as someone asked a question, which I thought was really lovely. I'm thinking about, the high school and the college graduate, but reminded that Maine has a lot of older population eligible for work. And are there any strategies either on the recruitment or retention side that you guys are thinking through around the people with a lot of experience, but perhaps ready to take a different opportunity? How retraining is, I guess, what occurs to me, but.
Yeah, from my perspective, just because we're in the staffing industry, I think that we've known for a long time that folks used to joke before I had gray hair, we'd almost pay a premium for gray hair, right? Because if a client needed somebody to come in and do a project, they'd rather have somebody with more experience than less. Older employees tend to be more mature, if you will, not necessarily looking for the social circle, right? So at work. So when we're, again, especially on a temporary side, if we're going to put somebody in for a project, that's always that we've always leaned in there. So we're constantly trying to identify folks that, want to return to work, or, maybe it's somebody that stayed home with their kids for 10 or 15 years and now wants to re-enter the workforce. I mean, we target those folks. They've got great experience. And again, a maturity level that I think our clients really, yeah, absolutely.
George, I would say not only a maturity level, but maybe a loyalty also.
Yeah.
The younger population is driven more by how much money they're making and the culture, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of loyalty. They are constantly looking out for the next best option out there. If we can bring in some of the senior senior citizens into the workforce, I think we can create more stability in some of our businesses.
And Andy, too, I think if you, the way I heard you say what you were looking for, the word grit resonates for me. So if you're
Yep.
looking for somebody with grit, with a little bit of tread on the tire, is that how you say that? A little bit of
Sure.
wear on the tire, however you say that, you might be able to prove out that grit a bit.
Yeah.
So I can see that absolutely working. Melanie, anything when it comes to, I'm assuming your pursuit is talent is talent is talent, and you're looking for a skill set, and you're big enough where you can go all over the place to sort of pick it off.
Yeah, we look for a variety of different sources. I think it's just having access to that talent. When I think about other industries, right, that we're talking about today, what are the different value propositions that you can have for folks that maybe want to work part-time or job share? I think there's a lot of different ways you can consider talent to get great access to talent, but again, meet them based on what they want for their schedule, their lifestyle, and what's going to fit best, while getting amazing knowledge into your door and critical skills. So I think we just need to continue to think differently about the employment value proposition, and again, the talent and the way they want to work. And we haven't cracked the code fully on that yet, by the way, but I think it's something we need to be talking about more.
One thing that really hits me as I think about our own organization at Hub is trying to make sure that the management team, all the levels of management are ready for this, because that is a different cadence that you're going to have with your people. And you've got to have the time to do it, and you have to know how to do it. And so I think that powering that next level of management, Melanie, I don't know if you're seeing that too. They need a different set of metrics. They need a different business process. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's what I was thinking.
And it's making sure you have great managers with great skills. So how do you double down on the manager boot camp, if you will, to make sure they understand an employee should demand, I have a great manager, and it should be a min qual of what they can expect at a company. And so I think that's the place where we're going to continue, is education and training on our managers, and making sure we're really building great leaders that not only have the what, which is the work, but also the how, which is the leadership behaviors, to Ed's point, in terms of that differentiator.
It's funny, Andy, because it kind of snuck up on me in my career. I'd have the mission nailed and I know what I want, but then as I'm building that group, how do I make sure that actually permeates down, so that the respect and trust that I can see in your communication style actually gets put out among everybody else, so that, you get where you want to be. I think that's a really hard thing, I think, for the person in charge. Just saying.
Yep.
Good. Well, I'm trying to think. I thought I saw one more question that I wanted to hit. Is there anything from a Maine point of view, Ed, I'm going to come your way with this, around working with, maybe it's unusual sources of talent? We're recognizing that Maine's going to have pressure from the outside as people come in and say, Google, et cetera, that I'd like you to come to work for me. But are there any unusual sources or collaborations that you're seeing coming out of this, Ed, to give Maine the talent pool that it needs to meet the future requirements? Any colleges, and you're at the forefront of this with what you're establishing.
Yeah, I just think, and Melanie will be able to speak to this much better. I mean, historically we thought of recruitment as kind of a transaction, right? We've got a need. Let's get the jets going, and let's go find 5 people, and we'll evaluate them and hire one. And I think it's much more about talent pipelining, and things like LinkedIn and others give you a platform to do that, right? And so it's not just what are the critical needs right now, but as a business grows, we're doing this with our clients all the time. It's don't wait until the need is critical or you lose somebody. It's, let's pipeline. If you need people right out of certain industries, let's look at that, in state and out of state, and just be as proactive as you possibly can. And that again, that can be, senior level talent, but it's also reaching outside the state of Maine and getting down to the colleges in Boston and elsewhere that are producing the kind of people that have been successful at your organization before.
Great nuggets. I know we're coming up against our time frame here. Ed and Melanie and Andy, I've just so enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure our audience, you guys have actively participated today, and I really appreciate it. A lot of good stuff in the Q&A, a lot of good stuff in the chat. So I'm deeply thankful to that, because it's always what makes this kind of thing more fun. Say thanks to Portland Press Herald for pulling us all together. I think these are really important conversations that make a difference for our community in Maine, and I'm proud to be part of that. I know Portland Press Herald will have some additional events coming up in the fall in Business Unusual, so this series is going to continue. And Andy and Ed and Melanie, thanks a million for doing this, and really appreciate your time.
Glad to help.
Thank you.
Yeah.